Welcome to a brand new Minecraft world. To everyone who saw the literal last video I posted, we're gonna mention that later. Don't worry about it. This, of course, is not a vanilla world though, and we're gonna be playing with the Create mod, as well as a couple other smaller mods, including some terrain/biome mods. However, as I am starting a new world, I decided that it would be smart to have as much of the Create mod stuff automated as I can, preferably as early as I can to make future projects easier. And so, in a move that no other YouTuber has ever done before except the ones who totally have, I decided I was gonna spend 100 days in this world to try and get all of the Create mod components automated. For the record, I intend to run videos in this world with the same so-called rules as last series. So yeah, we can just get into this. We only have 100 days after all. I spawned atop this mesa and get some starting sticks from the dry shrubs in the area, as well as some sherds and a smithing template from this little ruin nearby. However, I need more than just sticks, so I head over to the nearby savannah to grab some initial wood. As usual, this is for a crafting table, as a crafting table lets me make an axe, and now I can use my tree harvester mod to get through initial wood collecting a smidge faster. But more importantly, a wooden pickaxe so I can start doing a smidge of mining in the surface caves nearby. Wandering around a bit more, I find this weird slice in the stone, and decide to make my starter base here, just crawling in and digging out a little space for my crafting table, a furnace, and a chest. Really, all you need in a Minecraft house. Beds are nice, but I'm attempting to avoid sleeping as much as possible to avoid losing time as I feel like I'm going to need it. Especially because more mining in Amethyst Geode, getting shot dead by a skeleton, spooky lullaby music on my way back, and spending the rest of day 1 and the day of day 2 in the mines, I still haven't found a single block of andesite. Which is concerning. I run over to these cool formations in the ocean to check, but of course, not a smidge of andesite there either. It is day 3, I just mined my first diamond, and I still cannot find andesite of all things. This is not boding well for the challenge, is it? I do kill this zombie for his backpack though, so that's nice. And I suppose while I'm on this andesite search, I should mention why I'm not on that world from last episode. That would probably be smart. But if you really don't care, I will try and remember to add chapters so you can skip past the rambling. Well, basically with that old world I was using Fabric, 99% because of the Flashback mod and Axiom. Mostly Flashback because no shade to Replay mod, but Flashback is just super good, and has a ton of extra features, and for me runs better, and does not crash my game when exporting these video clips. However, that was conflicting with me wanting to play with the Create mod, and play on later versions, as the Fabric version of Create is a little behind the Forge and NeoForge versions of Create, and Flashback is not supported before 1.21, and I was stuck in the 120s, which unfortunately meant if I stayed on the old world, there would be no Frogports, no trial chambers, no Flashback, and quite a few other things missing. At least not for a while, as it takes a long time to port mods up, especially one as complex as Create. So why am I on a new world? Well, because I'm now on NeoForge. You may say, but doesn't that mean no Flashback mod? Well, A, I already didn't have it because I wasn't on the late enough version of Minecraft, but B, I actually do have it on this profile. See, literally the day after finishing the last Create video, I found this mod called Sinitra Connector, which I hope I said right, which, along with the Forgified Fabric API mod, allows you to run Fabric mods in NeoForge, which allows me to update to a newer version of Minecraft, update Create, and still keep my Fabric-only mods that I like. Now, that may lead you to ask why I couldn't just port the world over along with my mods and just keep using it. And well, there may have been ways I could have, however there were a couple mods that didn't seem to work bringing over, which is, by the way, the reason I swapped out compression bags for sophisticated backpacks, and frankly, after thinking about it, I decided that the green blob continent was kinda boring. And this gave me a chance to have a more interesting world to work with, especially since I decided to add mods like Biomes of Plenty and Terralith along with continents to make the world a little bit more of a varied landscape. But yeah, that is more or less the reason I'm on a new world. So now we can get back to the main focus of this video. And so, back to the andesite issue. After a bit of investigating, I figure out what the problem was, and as it turns out, it's Terralith's fault. See, unknown to me, Terralith actually removes the normal generation of andesite, granite, and diorite in favor of having underground biomes that use only one of those stones instead. This is a little annoying for the challenge, but I think long-term this is actually pretty cool, and should fit with some of my ideas for the world anyway. So using a nature's compass, I can find the closest andesite cave so I can actually get started. And before you talk smack, the closest andesite caves are literally over 3,000 blocks from the current cave house. So this was kind of a necessary move. Plus, I like these compasses. I prefer any failures, such as taking multiple days to find andesite, to be my fault, instead of me just getting unlucky and there being no andesite for literally thousands of blocks. So, some boating, walking, more boating, and finding one of the beautiful Young's Ocean monuments on the way, I arrive at this island on day 4. And so finally, below my feet lays the andesite I need to actually begin this challenge. I instantly begin digging down, actually finding myself in one of the Terralith-infested caves first, but pretty soon after, I walk over to the andesite ones, and can finally dig up a bunch of the stuff. With those, I dig up, emerging in the water, and decide to get started on this little tiny island right next to where I popped up, as it should be safer from most of the mobs I may have to deal with. After leveling it off, I place my crafting bench and chest, making it my new place, and then, 4 days into a crate challenge, make my first andesite alloy. You know, the most basic material in the create mod. Good stuff. Love to see it. As we move into day 5, I make my first mechanical press and hand crank, allowing me to smash some iron ingots into iron plates, which I want 5 of. With these 5 iron plates and 2 andesite alloy, I can make a whisk, which, when mixed with an andesite casing, just made by applying andesite alloy to a stripped log, and then a cog, I can make my mechanical mixer. Attaching that to this big water wheel I put on the floor, as well as some extra cogs so it can spin faster, you know, so it will actually function, I now have my mechanical mixer working and hanging over a basin. Now, instead of using 2 iron nuggets and 2 blocks of andesite for a single andesite alloy, I can just toss them into the mixer and it will make 1 andesite alloy for each nugget and block I put in, doubling the efficiency in which I can make the andesite alloy, which is good because while it is basic, it is needed for just about every basic create component. I decide to real quick check out this ruin on the island soon after, finding a couple mending iron chest plates and some cursive binding diamond boots. And normally, the boots being full of superglue would make me double guess putting them on, however, that is only if I ever actually intended on getting something better, which, if you have ever seen me play Minecraft before, you would know quite well that I absolutely do not intend to do that, so these are going right on my feet. As night falls on day 5, I grab my shears and some leaf blocks to make water in the shape of a portal next to the lava pool, making it very easy to just make my nether portal frame, which I for sure did not misclick during at all, and I also for sure did not forget to grab a flint and steel for. But with that, to the nether, as I need stuff from that place. Specifically, I need to find a fortress. It bugs out a little as I try and go in the portal, but that is probably fine. I tag my portal with a waypoint and begin looking for a fortress, totally forgetting the explorer's compass to help, but nothing wrong with a little extra exploration, right? My first move is to poke into and steal from this bastion, because, well, it was there, and I felt like it. No other reason, really. But hey, I got some decent stuff from that, so I call it a win. I do run back to the overworld for a moment to make a few blaze burners, though, as I realized it would probably be smart to bring those with, so I didn't need to make another trip to grab them after finding the fortress. However, as we crest into day 7, I do not find myself in a fortress, and instead find myself in a nuclear wasteland with slimes that jump very high. I thought this here was the nether fortress for a bit, but I realized pretty fast after entering that it was not. I also found the radiation director swimming in a lava pool, and a gas stuck in a cage in the middle of what I can only assume is an old power plant. Finding some odd loot in the chests, which I do not intend on using because I did not get any mod with this in mind, but it is kinda neat, I suppose. Not sure if I'm gonna keep this mod though. What is not neat, however, is finally getting hit by one of those low-gravity slimes and being hit with super poison, and then falling to my death because I made the mistake of touching the knockback 5 brambles as I try and run away from that place. Thank goodness I made a bed even if I don't plan on sleeping. Rip those glue-filled diamond boots though, I kinda liked those. But I have a spare mending iron chestplate from that old ruin, so at least there's that. I make another blaze burner and some basic equipment, and prepare to head back into the nether. This time, I actually remember to make the explorer's compass, as it is already the night of day 8, and I really need to find this fortress if I want to get every create component automated in this video. However, in order to make it, I need some cobwebs, so I have to go back into the mines, find a bit more iron, make a new set of shears, and then use those to nab 4 cobwebs from the infested caves. But then, right back to the nether with my compass, and after a quick scan, it finds a fortress only 730 blocks away. Which is still a decent amount of nether travel, but I've handled worse. A sneaky ghast, being very careful around these nefarious brambles now, and some maybe questionable routes through the nether later, and finally on day 9, I arrive at the terrible fortress. Looking for loot of course, but just as much looking for some blazes to take with me back home. And so, looting every ounce of crate mod components I can locate in here, as well as the loot I find in the barrels scattered around it while avoiding the wither skeleton populace, and of course, most importantly, putting a blaze in my empty blaze burner, I head out from the nether fortress on day 10. Already a 10th of the way through my time, and with a grand total of 0% of the create mod automated. Oh joy. However, I do make a much nicer path back to the portal, so at least when I inevitably need to come back to the fortress, it will be much easier to get there. It is the morning of day 11 when I return, and as much as I want to use the blaze burner right away, I have to go to the mines to collect some zinc first, as it and copper are now much more important. That is because, of course, I can take the zinc and copper bars and mix them together in the basin heated with the blaze burner to make brass, which is important for almost all of the more complex create components. First, I take our 4 brass ingots and turn them into plates, and mix those to make a brass hand. Then, drop into the mine to get redstone and mix 8 redstone with quartz to make rose quartz. Kill a phantom, which is still not hard, and then make paper and sand to make sandpaper. You still with me? Good, because I use the sandpaper to polish the rose quartz, then I mix the polished rose quartz with an iron plate to make an electron tube, which finally, along with the brass hand and an andesite casing, makes our first brass component, the deployer. The deployer is very important, and basically acts as an extra hand, being able to place things and apply stuff to things and a bunch of other stuff really. But for right now, the placing part is what I care about. Next component I make is a mechanical saw, using 3 iron plates, an iron ingot, and an andesite casing. After that, just a few linear chassis, using logs and andesite alloy. Those, along with a mechanical bearing I stole from the nether fortress, and a water wheel can make us our first automatic farm. I place the bearing in the middle of a dirt ring, using the linear chassis to make an arm, and place the saw at the end of it. And lastly, add the deployer so it can plant saplings. That's right, this is all you need to automatically farm trees. And while it's a little small, it should be fine, and honoring the old world, it will of course be a birch farm. However, I actually can't quite use it yet, as I need glue to put it all together. As if I moved it now, the saw and deployer would just get left behind. Glue isn't too bad though, just needing an iron nugget, an iron sheet, and a couple slime balls, the slime being the hardest of course. But in Create you can actually craft that stuff. By running wheat through a millstone or grindstones, you can make wheat flour, which that, plus water, makes dough, and then just add lime green dye to it and you get slime balls. However, instant problem. Where am I getting lime dye? Well, I'm not near a warm ocean, so no sea pickles, and green dye is also kind of annoying. But there is a small chance to get it from some of the flowers around the island if I put them in the millstone. So I just go out and pick some flowers and toss them into my millstone, hoping to get some of the dye. And after milling a bunch of rose bushes, I get a decent amount of green dye, which I can mix with some white dye I get out of some bone meal to make my 2 lime dye. Wonderful. 2 lime dye and 2 dough makes 2 slime, 2 slime, a nugget, and a sheet makes glue, then just slather that over the tree farm and it's actually finished now. Just give it some saplings in its chest and let the water flow over the water wheel attached to the bearing, and it starts to spin, planting saplings automatically. And when the trees grow, the saw will cut them down and store all the items it gets back in the chest, allowing the deployer to access the saplings to replant the tree right after. In a very similar vein, I then make some more iron sheets to make some harvesters, which can harvest and replant crops like wheat. Simply make a big dirt ring, place the bearing in the middle, long arm of chassis, place 2 harvesters on the front, check you made the ring about right by letting it swing around a little bit, and then finish up by finishing the ring, planting your wheat, and putting chests on the arm so it collects your bounty. However, next thing to get to do what I need to do is crushing wheels. But before I can make those, I need some mechanical crafters, specifically 21 of them. They craft in sets of 3, so that is 7 crafts, and the first 2 ingredients go by super quickly. 7 brass casings, which is just stripped logs right-clicked with a brass ingot, and then 7 crafting tables, which are crafting tables. But then I need 7 more electron tubes. That means back to the mines, as I need 7 iron for that, and I don't quite have that. Then pit stop in the nether for a little more quartz, as I'm short, and then also back to the mines again, as I need 5 more redstone dust to have enough for all the rose quartz. I grab a little extra, of course, as having a bit extra on hand is always good, since we're still way off from automating it. But rose quartz, sanding to polish, make them into tubes, craft those with my tables and casings, and now I got my crafters. Perfection. I needed these because the recipe for crushing wheels does not fit in a crafting table, so you have to use mechanical crafters, as they can be made into any size of grid. For the wheel, it is andesite alloy all around the edge for a total of 16 alloy, and then 4 planks of wood around the center, which is just some type of stone. It isn't picky. And with all that and some rotational power, it fits all into 2 crushing wheels, which is nice as I do need 2 to use them. I also decide to make another set of them now, as I'll need more later anyway. Then, just take the crafter apart as I shouldn't need them for a while, and then after that, with the crushing wheels and mechanical fan, I can make an iron farm. Yeah, it's pretty simple. No villagers required, and no need to worry about some random patch that kills its rates. Or at least, I hope so. Instead, I place a chest on the ground as the output, placing a smart chute on it that will pick up iron nuggets. Behind that, we have a fan with the crushing wheels above it, and above that, a cobblestone generator that will auto-mine with a drill. The fan needs a leaf block in front of it that has water, so that when it blows, it will use the wash function, which will wash all the items in front of it, in this case also blowing it onto the smart chute. And despite me making this wrong, for some reason using both sets of crushing wheels and therefore making sand instead of gravel, no idea why I did that, this is not that difficult. Basically, the cobble gen at the top makes cobblestone, which is dropped through a chute down into the crushing wheels, making it into gravel. The gravel is dropped down in front of the fan, which washes the gravel into flint, and a small chance of washing it into iron nuggets. Then, since the smart chute is filtered to pick up iron nuggets, it will grab the iron nuggets and store them in the chest. Only major change after that is using gear ratios to make it go a little bit faster. Gear ratios just being effectively chaining small and large cogwheels to speed them up, due to, like, math and stuff. Gotta add some extra water wheels too though, as the faster the rotation for the machines are, the more stress units they take, and water wheels only make a bit of stress capacity for the system to use. And of course, if you add too much stress without the capacity to handle that, just like in real life, everything breaks down and then I have to lay down in bed for a while. So let's not do that too much. I do also decide to make a list filter so the chute can pick up flint and iron nuggets though. Not because I particularly want the flint, but because I don't want a bunch of flint sitting there and lagging my game. It probably wouldn't have been a problem, but I didn't feel like finding out. Okay, actually one more change to the iron farm, I promise this time. I moved the cobblestone generator a little bit higher so I can fit in a vault, mostly so that I can swap from a 1 drill system to a 3 drill system, making the whole thing 3 times faster. It is positively hideous, but it works. So like, relatable or something. It can stay for now. After that, I make another fan over here to act as a personal use fan. This is handy as fans can do a whole lot more than just wash stuff. For example, by putting lava in front of it, I can cook stuff, turning 2 stacks of logs into charcoal in really not that much time. Quite handy. I then take some time to light up the 2 halves of this island a bit. Not all the way, but a decent amount. I have been having some mobs swimming over to me, and this should help at least a little bit with that issue. However, before I do what I want to do next, I decide I want infinite lava, and first step in that is to make a bunch of drills. So a bunch of andesite alloy, andesite casings, and some iron later, here is 40 drills, because I didn't want to wait for more iron to generate. I place those in this designated square I set up earlier, placing some chests on them for the items, and then attach a rope pulley I stole from the nether fortress to it. I glue this all together and add a water wheel to the pulley, letting it drop the drills down to mine out all the area under them. I did this first drop maybe a little too far, but after that I can pull it up and then just use a mechanical piston to shove the whole system 2 blocks over and drop it down again. Now, I could have done what I'm doing here easier and probably with less time, but I had never done this before, so I did it this way instead. And only by day 28 do I have the 20 by 20 hole in the floor dug out. But I also get to clear out some water from a water cave we ran into, which is a little annoying, but it could be a lot worse, I suppose. It is a fairly small water cave after all. After that, make a cobblestone retaining wall around the pit, and make a cobblestone floor to start pouring lava over. I need to make sure there's at least a little bit of lava over every single square in this area, and it takes a bit. But since I have a lava pool nearby, the longest part is just making sure I actually manage to mine out all the cobblestone under the lava, as I need it to flow down into the hole, of course. But with that handled, I run off to get kelp. Make a block of dried kelp, mix it with a copper casing and a copper sheet to make the hose pulley, which allows you to extract fluids from the world. Lowering this hose into the massive lava pit, making a pair of goggles so I can actually check I did this right, and then making a pump and some fluid tanks, I can verify that this pit right here qualifies as infinite lava for the hose pulley to extract, which is good for us. I pump it into a tank, for fun, I guess. Didn't really need to do that, but hey, it looks neat in the big copper box, so it's chill, I guess. And lastly, in this place for a while, I set up some more cobble to prevent any accidents from occurring in the bottomless lava abyss. I then forgot to record with OBS for a bit, but I didn't do much in that time, besides making 2 new Create components, the Frogport and the Packager, which are both going to be very important moving forward, and at least for me, are new features in Create. I first used them to send the iron nuggets from the original storage chest down to this chest named the Iron Nugget Warehouse, which seems to work. I like these things, they're kinda cute actually. After that, same thing for the flint. Packagers and Frogports are not terribly complex, but I'll say how to make them real fast before I forget. For Packagers, the first ingredient is a cardboard block. To make that, we mix water and saplings to make pulp, and then smash that pulp with a press to turn it into cardboard. Then, for cardboard makes a cardboard block, which with the addition of 4 iron ingots and 2 redstone dust makes a Packager. Frogports are also fairly simple. First, you need an item vault, which is simply made from 2 iron sheets and a barrel, and then add an andesite alloy and a slime ball to make the Frogport. Frogports can be placed on Packagers, which take items from their attached inventory, in this case the chest by the iron farm, and make packages of the items. The Frogport takes that package and can put it up on these chain conveyors. The chain conveyor takes the packages put on them towards the Frogport that it is addressed to. In this case, the address is being set via the signs on the packagers. The addressed Frogport then takes the package off the conveyor and puts it through another packager, which this time unpackages the items into the attached inventory. It is fun to watch, but I need to get back to working on the actual challenge because we are already up to day 33 and no actual Create components are automated. Which again was kinda the point. But before that, it's goop time. See, I need slime, but I do not want to keep running out of green and lime dye, and it would be super convenient if I just had infinite of the stuff. And lo and behold, I kinda can, but it is a little bit of a process to actually get there. First, I run off to get a bunch of ferns to get some starter green dye, for sure not exploding as I do that. I would never do that. I get that dye because of course I need green dye for the infinite green dye thing, but with 36 green dye, 36 sugar, 36 slime balls, and 108 wheat seeds, we can make 36 green mastic resin by smashing them together in a heated basin. Then, smash those resin chunks on the floor to make them into green mastic paste. Green mastic paste which can then be compacted in a basin again to make a block of green mastic resin. Then we put the 4 blocks into the heated basin with a mixer to liquefy them into liquefied green mastic resin, which is what we wanted. The goop. By putting this goop in front of a fan, it can bulk dye items in front of it, and for some reason still, you can use green bulk dyeing to make slime balls even though those are supposed to be lime. But I won't complain, it saved me some bones. So, I grab all the wheat my farm has and throw it into the crushing wheels to turn it into flour, put that flour in front of a bulk washer to make it into dough, and then bulk dye it with the resin to make just a few slime balls. And instantly after getting that, 36 slime balls, 36 sugar, a bunch of seeds, and 36 red dye this time to make a bucket of red goop. See, the resin is good for more than just dye, as when it comes in contact with lava it makes zoltanite, of the same color as the resin of course. Red zoltanite is special as it's one of the few zoltanites that when crushed makes resources. In the case of red it makes iron, but as with most zoltanite recipes, not as efficiently as the other route which I already have running for iron. So why am I doing this? Well, most of the zoltanites that crushed for resources crush for 2 different resources, and even rarer than the iron out of red zoltanite, you can also get redstone from crushing it. This is nowhere near as efficient as the other recipe for redstone, but it is way easier to set up, and therefore, especially as I'm on day 35 out of my allotted 100, I am doing this to save time. For now though, I just set it up like a cobblestone generator that I can visit when needed. After that, I make a similar contraption to the iron farm, but missing the washing step this time, so it just makes gravel, which I promise I do need. And, as with the iron nuggets and flint, I send that off towards the warehouse area to make a gravel chest over there. And now finally, to use the infinite lava area. My next machine I want to set up is an andesite automation machine, and that requires flint, gravel, and lava to be compacted inside of a basin. I have all 3 of those, and I figure with Frogports and Packagers I should be able to fairly easily put them all together. I place a Packager and a Frogport on either side of the andesite basin, one to pick up flint and the other to pick up gravel, and then move over to the lava tank, placing pipes and a pump to pump the lava over to the basin. Then, on the back of the warehouse chests, I place another Packager and Frogport to send the gravel and flint towards the basin. And as soon as they start doing that, we start having issues. It fills the basin with absolutely absurd amounts of ingredients and makes just a massive mess as I try and configure it. This is because with how we have it set up, it doesn't really have any actual limit to the amount it sends, so it just tries to send everything to become andesite, which is not ideal, especially as we will deal with more recipes that will require the same items as input. I try to ignore there being an issue and even set up an andesite warehouse chest, but it's pretty clear something is gonna have to change about this, especially as we start getting tons of packages just doing loops on the conveyors since they can't actually get picked up by their Frogports. After a bit of messing around in the pondering menus though, I find a stock link and a factory gauge, which based on what I'm seeing is the solution to the issue. Stock links share what is in a connected inventory with a logistics network, and factory gauges can be used to monitor, request, and automate recipes of items. In other words, exactly what we're looking for. The stock link is an easy craft, being a lightning rod, 3 copper sheets, and a redstone dust to make a transmitter, and then put that plus an item vault to make the stock link. The factory gauge, on the other hand, kinda sucks, because it takes 1 stock link and a precision mechanism to craft 2 of them, and precision mechanisms are kinda terrible to make. They need a golden sheet, and then unlike almost any other recipe, they can only be made via the repeated deployment onto said gold sheet with deployers, taking a total of 5 small cogs, 5 large cogs, and then 5 iron nuggets to get 1. So of course, I make the deployer, make the ingredients, and then one by one add those items onto the sheet. And it fails. Yeah, I kinda lied. A gold sheet, 5 small cogs, 5 large cogs, and 5 iron nuggets does not make a precision mechanism. It sometimes makes a precision mechanism, but can also just give you some other junk instead, like this cog. So now I need to get all those ingredients back together to try again. Thankfully, try 2 is a success, and I have my mechanism, which makes a whole 2 factory gauges. I try and place those right away, but I have to link them to a logistic network by right-clicking them on a stock link first, which luckily I have. I place the stock links on the packagers, setting the amount of items I want to bring over. I try that, and it doesn't work, because that is not how they work. Not even remotely. So, massive mess again. I fiddle with it and try again, but still not how they work. I look at the pondering screens for the factory gauge again and realize I'm gonna need more of them. A lot more of them. Because automating recipes with them is a little bit more complex than just putting them on a packager and expecting things to show up in that amount. There is probably a way I could have made a system like this work, but it's way worse, so enough about that. Instead, let's mention how I'm not making more precision mechanisms by hand, and set up this little loop belt with 3 deployers and a vault to make it a little closer to automated, but still hand-fed. I put on 7 gold sheets, and surprisingly, they all actually turn into the mechanisms I want. isn't that great. With that and some stock link crafting, I make 6 factory gauges, placing them on this random wall over here. One tracks my andesite, one tracks my gravel, and the last one tracks my flint. But wait, there's a problem. In order for it to know the items exist, I need a stock link on the packager attached to a chest with the items. And of course, with my wonderful design at the warehouse, I can't really do that. This leads me to the harrowing realization that pretty much everything I have done up to this point is actual garbage, and I need to tear it all down and just try again from scratch. Which is not a good realization to be having 43 days into a 100-day challenge. I am starting to have some serious doubts about my ability to achieve my goal for this video. And so, tearing it all down time, starting with the iron farm I guess, and then just part by part until all that's left is the starter island personal workspace and the chests. A couple other things too actually, but safe to say that if it was automatic, it is gone. I get started again with making a rotation speed controller by combining a brass casing and one of my spare precision mechanisms. This is good as it allows me to choose what speed things run at, and I use this for a personal press to get started again. It is much more convenient at this speed. All of those plates were used to make item vaults, which I put next to the old warehouse platform, and this will for sure be used and not instantly forgotten. I would never. Next to it I put a packager and the initial stock link, making my new logistic network, and with that, and an item hatch, I test the factory gauges by placing stuff in the vault, and seeing the item appear on the gauge associated with that item, which is a good start. Next, I begin making a large wooden floor on the initial small island, deciding this is where my factory gauges will be set up. I start by making the short initial tree, cobblestone gauge connected to the gravel gauge, as I will be sending the cobble from the cobble area to the gravel area to be made into gravel. Then, gravel connects to both the flint and iron nugget factory gauges as it will be sent to the washing area to be turned into those two items. And last at the moment, flint and gravel are also connected to andesite as those are its item requirements. I start making a cobblestone platform past the wheat farm, making an output chest for the cobble area, and making a sign on the packager as I don't quite realize yet that I don't need it. But leading into the chest is a chute, the chute taking from a vault, and the vault fed by chutes below the cobblestone farm. And boom, infinite cobble. However, I also make a threshold switch connected to the cobble chest, which will toggle this clutch to turn off the drills when the chest starts getting too full, so we don't accidentally overflow on cobblestone. After that, another platform. This one has a chest fed by a chute under crushing wheels fed by a chute fed by a chest, which itself is fed by a packager and a frogport. This is of course the cobblestone crusher, which makes our gravel, and as long as I have a packager connected to the gravel chest which has a stock link on it, my factory gauges can always tell how much gravel I have and will avoid sending more cobblestone than the required amount. This is why I don't need signs on the packagers anymore, as the factory gauges give the destination address wirelessly when the item in the packager's connected chest is requested somewhere. Then of course, next segment after that, we need to start washing our gravel. Would it have been better to do this all in one area? Maybe, but I didn't do that. So we will find out, I guess. Washing gravel is a little bit different as it spits out two items, and both have only a chance of dropping, but for this one it seems to work just fine just sorting them into their boxes after washing. You may also be noticing as I'm making these that I'm still powering everything with water wheels. Is this smart? No, but it sure is easy, and that feels nice 48 days into this. I also make sure to take the time to move the stuff from the old warehouse over to the new areas to not have a bunch of extra stuff laying around where I can't use it. Then, setting the request for the washing products, I send the gravel over automatically, and I start getting my iron and flint again. And to finally catch back up with the garbage thing, next up is andesite automation. This is more or less the same, but I am sending requests for both gravel and flint. But with the factory gauges, that just means another link, so the difficult part is just getting the lava all the way over here, because I built it like halfway across the island from the lava pool. But a long pipe that dips under the platform to come around from behind the basin, as well as a chain of pumps to actually get the lava through it, and there we are, andesite has been automated again. So on the good old day 50, we are caught back up with the old nightmare device. I do end up spending some more time to speed up the lava flow, however, as it's a little too slow to keep up with everything else. And halfway through this, and still no sleep, I would like to say that yes, I have been getting attacked by phantoms on the regular. No, they are still not that annoying. The trident drowned is, though. So with that, let's start making new stuff, why don't we? First up, andesite alloy. This will just take some iron nuggets and the andesite we just made. And we put that in a basin with a mechanical mixer above it, and we got our wondrous alloy. Also, at this point, I finally organized my 3 backpacks so I can actually find stuff in them. Wild idea, I know. Around this time, however, I do start to notice that my cobblestone farm is not keeping up with the others, and so let's make a little upgrade real quick. Instead of 3 drills mining cobble into a vault, let's do 10 into a bigger vault, which I got from the big vault I made earlier at the start that I promised I wouldn't forget to use. This counts as using it, surely. But with that, a little over 3 times more cobblestone is being made. I also speed up the cobble crusher while I'm at it, as I figure it's gonna need it in the long run. And so next step, colors. I make platforms out behind the other stuff now, and set up a very similar, but at least marginally smaller version of the cobblestone generator. But this is not going to make cobblestone, this is gonna make zoltanite. Specifically, this first one is making red zoltanite, which is fairly easy. Just swap water for resin, and as with the cobble farm, remember to add a threshold switch to turn it off as it starts getting full. Then, exact same setup for green zoltanite, which can be crushed into copper, and also clay, but we don't care about that, and we'll be throwing it away. I also set up 2 more systems that are the same, but need to stop to actually make the liquid resin for these next 2. I want yellow to make golden quartz, which is the only zoltanite I actually want both products of, and then also blue zoltanite to make zinc. But you remember that. Slime, sugar, seeds, dye, smash, smoosh, compress, melt, and scoop. Bucket of resin. Slime, sugar, seeds, different dye, smash, smoosh, compress, melt, and scoop, and then I have the other bucket of resin. Smash, smoosh, compress, melt, and scoop. Bucket of resin. With the buckets of yellow and blue, there are those 2 setups as well. Just gotta make and place some factory gauges for them, and now they're part of the network, and I can place some more to prep for the products I want from them. And then, Lucy from the future here to tell you that this next move should not be recreated and was really stupid. See, I need to crush all this zoltanite, but it somehow being day 62 now has me worried that I just need to get stuff down that work. And so, I come up with what I thought at the time was a brilliant scheme to crush all the zoltanite blocks in one area, and put them in a normal double chest. 1 double chest. For like 5 different products. I set up the crusher itself to be almost exactly the same as the gravel one, but instead of it crushing a block to make a product, it takes in 4 different blocks on 4 different requests, and crushes all of those into 8 different products, 3 of which I auto-void with a smart chute and a filter, and the others I just try and do my best to keep only an amount that would not back up my chest. Now, this is already a nightmare, as this crusher setup is going to be flooded with blocks to crush when we get low on all of these things, and it cannot keep up. But it is also an issue, as I need to always make sure that there is not too much quartz or gold in there, as if there is too much of one, it will keep getting made if there's not enough the other. So that is also bad. However, if that was not bad enough, this is also where I learned that factory gauges are kinda bad at recipes with variable chances for products. See, they remember how much they sent, and you're supposed to tell them how much that will make. However, since this is a chance recipe, we can't really say exactly how much will be made, and will therefore not really be able to do that properly, leading to the factory just kinda waiting for products to show up that never will. Fortunately for me though, I do find a fix for this, as you can just set a time interval for which the factory will forget how many packages it sent, and just send another set based on how much it still thinks we need. Unfortunately however, this leads to the issue of the crusher sometimes getting backed up being even worse, as it allows more zoltanite to be sent even if there's already a ton in the chest, leading to backups. So, I have to have it forget after a decent amount of time, but the longer I have it wait, the slower the system is. So, long story short, I'm going to need to do a redesign of this at some point, and when I do, I had better make a different crushing area for each of these blocks, like, oh, I don't know, right under the generator, as we don't need these blocks for anything else, and it would save us so much time, effort, and stupidity from being funneled into the Nightmare Scringus device. It is now day 65, by the way, and I am just now done with that. So yeah, waste of time for sure. Any time saved from not making more crushing wheels was annihilated by the absolute magnitude of time wasted making the system actually function. And that's assuming that this thing doesn't break. But with my metals, automated, I make more packagers, more frogs, more precision mechanisms. Of course. But I need these for the next few locations. I put them in a row, of course, as they're all effectively the same thing, being compactors to turn those nuggies into ingots, as I need the ingots of all these metals. In fact, I need those more most of the time. Fortunately, these are easy, and are just a basin and a press. Filter on the basin and pull out what you want with a chute. I can even make them all close together since they're all only 3 blocks wide at their widest, and that's like mostly just the cogs and the water wheels. Then I just set up the factory gauge, which I find out right here that I accidentally put in the wrong directions. See, apparently you can't connect them if they're in different orientations, and I for some reason have them in different orientations. This leads to me finally making a wrench, but lo and behold, you cannot rotate them after placing them. Unfortunate. So instead, I just pull the ones oriented wrong and put them back down in the correct orientation. This is fine. I'm not running low on time or anything, and I mean, I have a whole, no create components automated yet. But anyway, 63 nuggets to 7 ingots, and we're done with the bars. Or so you and I thought, but I built all of these wrong somehow. I connected the packager to the chute, and not the basin. And hey, some of them I didn't even remember to give a basin. So yeah, I made a mess again, and had to put it back together correctly. But fortunately, since they're so simple, there was no way I could mess them up a second time. So it just works now, because, you know, I built it right. While doing this, the Zoltanite Crusher backs up too. I get attacked by phantoms, but they're not all that, and I make the Zoltanite Crusher not throw out the iron as I'm perpetually low on that stuff, so might as well take the extra, right? But with that finished, just make another platform so I can get working on the next thing. The next machine looks very similar to the compactors, but it is a mixer for brass ingots, our final metal. This one is also a bit different, as I quickly realize, as I can't put the chute directly under the basin, as I need a blaze burner there. Fortunately, however, I can just have it a bit off, and then the basin actually makes its own little output chute thingy to deposit the finished items. This does mean I have to go back to the nether, but thanks to the path I made to the fortress, it is more or less easy. It is a bit of a confusing path at times, but I just nab a blaze, run back to the portal, and then put the blaze burner where it goes. But now, small problem again, as I also need to automatically fuel this blaze burner, which in the end I decide to do by using a deployer to just apply some planks to it, that for the time being are being hand-fed, but I put this factory gauge on the input Frogport so that I can have some delivered when I actually have those in the system. So now we have our auto brass machine. But yeah, next big thing we need in the factory is wood. I stopped our birch farm from spinning a while ago because its chest was full, and I was just snatching from it on the occasions when I needed wood and or the saplings. But now, I need that wood in the factory, and automatically, so I set up a portable storage interface on it and send the items out into this big vault, which I set up to void excess, but also has a Frogport, of course, to send out any of these items in case we need them. The very first thing I need them for is stripped logs, as I need those for all the casing blocks, so chest on a conveyor leading to a saw that strips the logs into another chest that is the output, plus some factory gauges to track their production. Super simple, and so right after that we can move to casings. These are quite similar in setup to the stripped logs, just instead of a saw in the middle of the belt, we have a deployer above it. I have all the items deposited into this chest above the system, and use smart chutes to move the logs down a chute onto the belt, and the other putting the andesite alloy into the deployer. Then, set up the factory gauges and send the logs and alloy to the stripped for andesite port, and boom, automatic andesite casings. Just gotta actually put the funnel into the output chest down, so you know, it'll actually go into the chest. And since that is so simple, I can get to work on the 2 duplicates I can make of it right now. One for brass casings and one for copper casings. Which, yeah, the only change in design for these is that they take their respective ingot instead of the andesite alloy. So here they are. During that, I did have to fight for some precision mechanisms again. And that was fun. But now with the 3 casings down, now I can start making actual components. Right? Well, no. Next thing I'm setting up is another bonk device, and fighting with RNG of the precision mechanisms again. This is always a great joy. Thanks for the cog, Create. I love it. Oh, and the gold plate too. That's just wonderful. Well, third time's the charm, so now I can finish the bonking device. This one just makes gold sheets. After that, 2 more mixing areas, this time not needing the blaze burner though, and guess what? This is our first actual kind of Create components. The cogs! However, I started making these so fast I kind of forgot I did not have either of their ingredients automated yet. Also, I had more mechanism difficulties during that, because of course there was, and when I noticed that I didn't have stuff automated for cogs, it was a moment, and I decided to take a bit of a break before working on those prerequisites. It was not a pleasant day 83 realization. Fortunately, the 2 ingredients really are not that bad to deal with, and I start out my return by letting the Zoltanite Crusher hold onto iron again. This toggles on and off a lot, so you know, occurrence. But the ingredients for cogs, both are quite simple, as I can pretty much just copy the log stripper a couple of times, as both can be made with the saw. First is shafts, which can be sliced from andesite alloy, and then birch planks, which can be sliced from stripped logs. Then, as usual, packagers, frogports, and stock links. And at this point, do I even have to mention the failed precision mechanism craft? Because yeah, it keeps happening. But of course, last but not least, the factory gauges for these and the cogs can be set up, and now we actually, for real, 85 days into this mess, have cogs automated. I'm so good at this. The birch farm, however, is terribly slow, which is already becoming an issue, and makes me miss the old birch farm. I should rebuild that sometime. But those cogs were not just automated because cogs are helpful. I mean, they are, but knowing me, I'm gonna forget that and handcraft them 90% of the time anyway. No, I got these because they are an ingredient for my true nemesis, the precision mechanism. So, I make 3 deployers, and next to the saw areas begin working on my precision mechanism build. 3 deployers over the belts, a chest feeding into and a chest taking off the belt, all 4 of which are fed by the 4 smart chutes pulling out of the big item vault at the top. Gold sheets for the chest, and then little cogs, big cogs, and iron nuggets for the deployers, in that order. Don't mind me managing to put the complete wrong filter on one of those, I fix it later. However, this is not done, as the plate does not need to go through these steps once, it needs to pass through each deployer 5 times. So, I set up a filtered funnel to take everything off the belt before it reaches the output except for the finished precision mechanisms, and from the attached barrel it runs back to the start of the cycle. Then I just need to actually remember to power the inserters, which I somehow did not notice for an embarrassing amount of time. Like, wow, we cannot ignore that, that was special. Then, just add more water wheels so that it can actually function, and boom. We never have to deal with crafting these things by hand again. Which I guess gives me more time to show these phantoms, they really are not special. I sat here for a little just watching its beauty, probably forgetting I only have 13 days left or something. Like, come on, Lucy, hustle, hustle, you're running out of time. Ah, wait, one moment. Scratch that. 12 days left. How has this happened, you ask? Probably the terrible inefficiency of both my time management and the factory itself, as evidenced by me hand-cutting birchwood to add to the factory. But like, whatever, I guess. My next goal for an automated component is the stock links, as I need one for every system I make, and it also gets us the vaults along the way, which are also pretty nice. First machine to do that is this simple 3x1 crafter I make that turns copper ingots into lightning rods. It's pretty simple, but is notable as it's the first one that uses mechanical crafters. And by far the easiest one that uses mechanical crafters, but that's spoilers or something. After that is another simple machine, and one that's the same as another one we've made earlier. This is the same as the gold ingot to sheet machine, but instead of being the gold sheeter, it's the copper sheeter. And with that, I have all the ingredients for the first component, the transmitter. And after looking at the ponder screen for factory gauges a little more to see how the auto-crafting stuff here works, I'm pretty confident I have it. My first attempt used one packager, and I assumed that would just work, despite the ponder menu specifically recommending something called a repackager. I assumed it did not need it as it was just doing one recipe, and it would never pick up anything it did not need for this recipe. I, however, very quickly realized that that was not the case as it just shoved a bunch of the ingredients in a random order and spit them all over the floor. So I turned that off and something else. This time it is a frog on the repackager, which is taken from the packager into the crafter, which also did not work, but this time in the not doing anything kinda way. So I put all the stuff from the repackager into a chest and then into a packager, and that still did nothing. And then I broke stuff and the packages went absolutely everywhere. Now, I would explain why this next one didn't work, but I genuinely do not know why this one does not work. My best guess is it's not working on a technicality of the packages being in the chest and not this one? Even though they're the same chest, but yeah, no idea on this one, as it is almost identical to the one that ends up working. I spend up to day 91 though trying to get this to work, and even looking stuff up online to try and figure out what was wrong and why the repackager was just totally ignoring the contents of the box. Also, shout out to this final try before taking a break, which was built on sheer desperation and hatred, and I cannot tell you for the life of me what I was thinking when I made this thing. But lo and behold, it didn't work, so I logged off to go to a creative testing world to figure this out. And I gotta tell you, there is almost no feeling quite like going to a creative testing world, building what you thought was the exact same thing you had just tried before to do, a test of why it wasn't working, just for it to instantly work on your first try. So, back to the real world, I just build that block for block as I did in the creative world. Packager on the bottom leading into the back of the crafters, chute on that, repackager on top of that leading into a chest, the chest which has a frogport on it which is the main input. I was so confused at this point that I half expected to turn this system on to have it somehow still not work. But thankfully for my mental state, it does. It just does. These things confuse me greatly, but if it works, I guess. And it's day 82 now, so I really do not have much time to be more baffled by this. And I need to work on the next stuff. So, another crafter set up right next to that one, which will make my vaults once I have the materials for those, which I don't. Don't know why I made this first. First ingredient, though, is super easy, and it's just another sheeter machine. This time for iron sheets, though. And as usual, I get to kill more phantoms during this. And nothing else is even of note besides for the crippling iron shortage. Due to that shortage, I decide to only make a very small amount of sheets at a time, just to avoid making all the iron I do have into sheets. Right after that's another saw area, this time turning planks into slabs. You've seen this exact design 3 other times already though, so I won't dwell. And a bit more hand-collecting birch and some factory gauges later, it is done. Birch slabs are automatic. These are of course good, as I need them for the next crafter setup, and when I tell you I made sure this was an exact replica of the others, I mean it. I did not trust these things at this point, and was not about to have it break because I had the audacity to move one block. This mechanical crafter array is of course for barrels, which as soon as I get my factory gauge down for it, it begins crafting without issue. And it's only day 95! Next is the factory gauge for vaults, as the factory gauge is the only part of that I still need to put down. So that is also done now. Wondrous. I also definitely requested to make way too many of them, but it is what it is at this point. It didn't super matter, as I then had to go around unjamming stuff and throwing nuggets around because lo and behold, the Zoltanite Crusher got jammed and also was for some reason not giving items out. Damn. Who could have seen this coming? I also have no idea when, why, or how, but the lightning rod machine has no packager or frogport. So that was also a thing I got to deal with. But hey, after all that, some vaults started crafting finally, and now I can continue working on stuff. And that is good, because I only have 3 days left to work on this. So, let's get going. Stocklink time. Unfortunately, that does mean another crafting grid, and even though it's only a 2x1 recipe, if I want to do the crafters how I've been doing them, I gotta do that with a 3x3 crafter grid. So I do that. I would talk about it more, but it is literally just the same thing again. Just this time mixing all the vaults and the transmitters instead of whatever the ingredients I was using before were. And that is all handled by the factory gauges anyway. So, crafter thingy, factory gauges, and boom, it just works. Or does it? Well, it decides to not, instead just putting the ingredients wherever the hell it wants to again. But it only takes me a little bit way too long to realize that it is because I put the frog on the repackager instead of the chest. Like a dumbass would. And after making the factory gauges forget what happened, it is fixed. Grand. Now I just have to deal with the fact that we are still in a crippling iron shortage since I decided to not make the iron farm 1 unit. I'll fix that when I inevitably work on this again. But after that, since A, I have all the ingredients for it, and B, it will be useful when I have to make more on this past the 100 days, I make a mixing area to make the factory gauges. These just take a stock link and the precision mechanism in a basin, mix those together, and you get 2 factory gauges. Once again, I could go deeper into that, but this is a design we've used multiple times now. It's the same one as the cogs, just a different recipe. And of course the factory gauge to make sure it actually does that stuff. But I still have a little bit longer, so let's do a little bit more before I have to admit defeat. First, this mixer next to that other one, which would not have taken so long if it wasn't for the return of the nefarious trident drown killing me. Twice. But after getting the time to actually set this thing up, it makes rose quartz, which is nice as it's used in a lot of the advanced components. But the rose quartz is not useful in and of itself, and I need to polish it. But fortunately for me, in this pack I have an alternative to having to automate sandpaper for that. Instead, I can make a setup almost identical to the saw setups, but instead of a saw I place a fluid drain. But in the fluid drain and on top of it I place these mechanical grindstones. Now, when I run the rose quartz through this, I can polish it. However, much less fortunately, as I finish this up, it is the rainy morning of day 100. So, to answer the question of if I, a very much incompetent person, can automate all of the create mod in 100 days, well, it seems like the answer is no. However, this factory is going to need to be finished. So, I'm gonna need to do another video's worth of work on it. However, I feel if I did make that into a video, it might be a smidge repetitive, so I guess we'll see. After all, this video is just kinda meant to be a launching off point for me making actually cool projects in this new world. I want the next video I publish to be impressive after all, and not just me floundering in this amalgamation of despair. I'm kinda invested in Minecraft at the moment though, so that might not be that far down the lane. But I suppose we'll see, because I'm gonna stop making promises about what the next video is gonna be. After all, I said something about not doing videos on the same game multiple times in a row, but I'm very clearly not doing that, so we'll see. Until then, however, thanks for observing, and as always, farewell.